Morning, everyone. So today we are going to start about the objectives of teaching English. And in English, teaching objectives are very important before starting the class. So a teacher just prepare many objectives and many points before starting their teaching. Before starting their teaching, they are he or she is like he or she is very must prepare their objectives. They are teaching some teaching methods, so they can so they can conduct the method properly. This is the very important part. First of all, content like language objectives. Here we are talking about the language objectives here. So first of all, example of a content objective you are currently teaching. First of all, currently teaching objectives are very important. Currently, what you are preparing, what you are giving and delivering. So example of a content objective you are currently teaching. What are language objectives? How do you use them in your class? Why are they important? These are very important. Why are they important? Why it is so important for the class, for student? How do you use them in your class? How do you use them in your class? And what are language objective and currently teaching method? So first of all, language objectives are often problematic for content teachers because it may be difficult to identify language objective. May be difficult. Content teachers do not have limit to teach language. Teaching language is the ELT teacher's job, and content teachers may not know enough about the students' language proficiency to determine appropriate language objectives. So, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. As we know that this is the sequence: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. This is the sequence of language. So, first of all, this sequence is very important. So, readings, text, vocabulary list, notes from overhead, writing, vocabulary list, and notes, answers to comprehension questions, logs and predictions, sharing writing and speaking. Reading. Reading means text, your vocabulary part, text part, novel, and themes, and different notes from overhead you are reading, and writing vocabulary, writing vocabulary list and notes, answers to comprehension questions, logs, predictions, sharing writings, speaking. In speaking, answering questions, discussion, and with a partner or group members, predicting, and this will happen in a safe, low risk environment, and listening to the teacher, to student, to tapes, and when playing a video, turn the subtitles on. This is the very important. Just turn the subtitles on. So, functions of language. The English language is vast and complicated. This is not actually easy, this is vast and complicated. What functions of language should content teachers focus on the ELT students? So, basic foundation of language and subject verb agreement, and this is very important subject verb agreement, the progar, and so many things we can see that use the obvious, possessive, and third person singular, and tense, present, past, future, basic verbs to be, to have, to like, to see. I have, you have, he has, she has, we have, they have, I, you, we, they had, I will have. So, we have to focus on the first person, second person, and third. This is very important. First, your first person, your second person, and your third person. Then after in vocabulary building, basic language, basic language, technical language, word wall and word bank and punctuation, retelling, explaining. So basic functions of language for language very important, and that it sounds and their pronunciation, complete sentences, hold students accountable for basic sentence and basic sentences, word order. This is very important. If we are taking class of language and teaching methods in English in language, so we have to focus on the letter sounds, pronunciation, and complete sentences. Hold students accountable for basic sentences structure, basic sentences, word power, word order. And then after where to begin when thinking about language objectives, and determine key vocabulary, concept, words and other words, and consider language functions, and define, desire, describe, and compare, explain, and summarize it. Then, after where to begin when thinking about language objectives, so clear expectations, decide on language skills, and read for main idea, listen and give an option and opinion, identify grammar or language structures, verb tenses, sentence structure, and punctuation, question formation. Then, after where to begin when thinking about language objectives, and consider language and task, explore language learning strategies and prediction. Then, after writing language objective, this is very important, writing language objective. So, first of all, define it and describe and identify, label, name, spell, compare. Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to start on the communication. We are discussing about the non-verbal communication, and why this communication is so important in our life. So we are just discussing about the communication, and communication is what we are sharing, whatever we are talking, and this is the most famous quotation by George Bernard Shaw. I'm the best, I'm the most spontaneous speaker world, because every word, every gesture, and every thought be carefully rehearsed. This is the most famous line by George Bernard Shaw. Yeah, I'm the most spontaneous speaker in the world, because every word, and every gesture and every thought has been carefully rehearsed. That is practice. We can simply say that we require practice, we require rehearse, we require lot of time practice and lot of time rehearsal, and these things are very important. So presentation outline means what is non-verbal communication, difference between verbal and non-verbal communication, and importance and power of non-verbal communication, types of non-verbal communication, and forms of non-verbal communication, non-verbal communication around the world. Non-verbal communication must be understandable and should be understandable. So this is what this is non-verbal communication, and difference between verbal and non-verbal communication, and the importance and power of non-verbal, importance and power of non-verbal communication, types of non-verbal communication, forms of non-verbal communication, non-verbal communication around the world. Non-verbal communication must be understandable. So we can say what is non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication is verbal communication without words. So non-verbal communication is a process of communication through sending and receiving wordless messages. So verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Before moving forward, it's keep in your mind that verbal communication and non-verbal communication are interconnected, that and they operate together in communication. Difference between verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal and non-verbal are all types of communication, but the difference between them is that we use our voice in verbal communication, and we use body sign in non-verbal communication. The big difference. Uh, this is the big difference. We can say that body sign and voice. The importance of non-verbal communication. Verbal and non-verbal communication plays an important role in how people interact with one another. People are using around 35% verbal communication and 65% non-verbal communication in daily life. Non-verbal communication has also cultural meaning. The most important thing in communication is to hear what is not being said. So, power of non-verbal communication. So, non-verbal communication is the most powerful form of communication, more than voice or even words. Non-verbal communication helps to create your message, image to others' mind, and even you can express your emotions and feelings in front of others, which you are unable to express in words. As per my point of view, there are two types of nonverbal communication. Maybe I am wrong, or maybe right. Let's move on to next slide and try to understand my point of view. So types of nonverbal communication, and there are two types of nonverbal communication. Intentional nonverbal communication, example pointing out the pointing out the finger and giving smile and clapping. Unintentional nonverbal communication, examples may be intentional or unintentional nonverbal communication message. Form of nonverbal communication, eye contact, your facial expressions, posture, and ability to or touch, gestures, personal space. Eye contact is also a very important part of communication. So, eye contact, a key, a key characteristics of non-verbal communication, expressed much without using a single word. In American culture, maintaining eye contact shows respect and indicates interest. Eye contact also established the nature of a relationship, and now we have a different facial expressions. We can assume, we can understand, we can judge, and also even we can differentiate, and also we can say according to their expressions we can guess their emotions. And so facial expression are the key characteristics of nonverbal communication. Your facial expression can communicate happiness, sadness, anger, or fear. So posture, and how you carry yourself tells a lot about you, how you walk, sit, stand, or hold your hand. Not only indicates your current mood, but also your personality in general. For example, if you cross your arms and while standing, you indicate that you may be closed off and defensive. Meanwhile, walking with your head down and avoiding eye contact with others may indicate shyness. So, touch. So, communication is the communicating by touch or haptics is the characteristics of non-verbal communication and used where when we come into physical contact with other people. For example, we use handshakes and to gain trust and introduce ourselves. Gesture. The gesture is a characteristic of non-verbal communication in which visible body actions communicate particular message. This is also very important part of the communication. So gestures include movement of the hands, face, or other parts of the body. And let's see some most common gestures. And this is a gesture, different people have different gesture, different style, different attitude, and different perception, and different style. Also, we can say that. So then these are some gestures, different gestures are here. So person space is your that the space between yourself and others. And this invisible boundary becomes like only when someone bumps or tries to enter your world. So non-verbal communication around the world. Non-verbal communication in Pakistan is expressing happiness, respect, and love for others. Now, non-verbal communication around the world. Non-verbal communication in China. Chinese don't like being touched by strangers and therefore don't make any body contact. So, and India, so this is again greeting with namaste, placing both hands together. Light move is a very common non-verbal communication and shows respect. So, non-verbal communication of the world and in USA and quite informal way of non-verbal communication and a handshake smile. And non-verbal communication must be understandable, but what we and like so you know we have seen lots of things here about the communication. Now we will discuss some language methods and teaching methods. Why teaching methods is important in communication also. So English is not a subject, but a language. English is not a subject, but a language. A language is not taught; it is taught. This is very important. The language is not taught; it thought. So characteristics of language, evolutionary in language, dynamic and not static, a complex whole system of systems, and morphology, phonology, semantics, syntax. So in morphology, the study of formation of words, phonology, the sound system, semantic, the study of meanings of words, and syntax, the arrangement of words in a sentence. A social phenomena, a symbolic system, a this is a systematic, systematic. So this is, very, important, part of the, language. So we can say skills of language. This is the sequence. This is the, sequence, sequence part. So, listening and speaking during writing, this is a sequence of skills of language, listening, speaking during writing, and, speaking and writing both are active. Speaking and writing, active, productive skills, and listening and reading both are passive and receptive skills. Listening and reading are passive skills because we do not need to produce language to do them, and speaking writing are active skills because we need to produce language to do them. A passive skill must be learned, and before an active skill. Natural sequence of learning the skills of language and listening, speaking, writing. First language and second language, target language, the language which is to be taught in the classroom, the mental development of the child taken place in his mother tongue. So listening, speaking, rewriting, these are sequence. In English, English is an international language. It is the language of the world. English is known as lingua franca of the world, and lingua franca means the common language of communication. English is the language of science. English is one of the language of India, and approach that feels us what to teach. Approach that feels us what to teach, and the method how to teach. A method is an implementation of approach. So communicative language teaching, CLT, is a broad approach. CLT is a broad approach to the teaching of language. In CLT, interaction is both means and the goal of learning target language. So language learning is a learning to communicate. In CLT, students learn to communicate through interaction in the target language. In CLT, there is an attempt to link classroom language learning with language activities and outside the classroom. Then after, CLT makes use of CLT makes use of real life situation. CLT makes use of real life situation to teach the target language of communicative activities are an essential part of CLT, and role playing, interviewing, language games. Meaningful communication should be the goal of all classroom activities. CLT, the teacher plays the role of facilitator. CLT is the pupil oriented approach. In CLT, the teacher's main task is to determine the language needs of the learners, and communicative competency is the desired goal in the CLT, the ability to communicate. The main aim of CLT is to provide communicative competency to the learners, and coined by Delheims. Communicative competency has four aspects. Linguistic competency means the knowledge of grammar and vocal of language. The sports competency is the ability to converse. Social linguistic competency means the ability to use a language approach in a given social situation. And strategic competency means repair of breakdown, and equal emphasis on all four language skills. In CLT, the focus is on meaningful communication and not in the structure. Meaning is paramount here. CLT is a task-based approach. In CLT, the learners learn to use the language instead of studying the language. Translation maybe of learners benefit from a judicious use of mother tongue may be allowed. The main objective of teaching English is to enable the main objective of the main objective of teaching English is to enable the main objective of teaching English is to enable the learners to use it. And language learning is not easy unless it is connected to real life. Language must be practiced in real life situation. In CLT, contextualization is the basic premise. Trial and error is considered an essential part of learning. So, background to CLT language learning has seen many changes last 50 years, we can group the trends of language teaching in the last 50 years into three phases and traditional approaches and methods and class and classic CLT, current communicative approach and inductive inductive example to rule. Oral drilling means practice and correct pronunciation and accurate mastery. Traditional approaches like audiolingual begin to fall out of fashion, and it was argued that language ability did not mean grammatical competency, only linguistic competency. Communicative competency is needed to use language communicatively. Communicative competency is a broader concept than linguistic competency. Linguistic competency is only a part of communicative competency. It was assumed that the knowledge of grammar could be picked up informally by learners. The notion of communicative competency was developed and CLT was born. CLT created a great deal of enthusiasm when it first appeared in 1970s. The teachers and institutions all around the world began to think their teaching methodology and in phase 3 current trends in CLT. Since the 1990s, CLT has been widely implemented. There is no single set of practice and principles that characterize CLT. There is no universally accepted model of CLT. CLT is a set of generally agreed upon principles that can be implemented in different ways. So, assumptions of NCLT, language learning is facilitated when learners are engaged in interaction and meaningful communication. Language learning is facilitated by communicative activities. Language learning is a gradual process. It involves creative use of language, trial and error. Learners develop their own route to language learning and they progress at different rates. The teacher is a facilitator and the classroom is a community where the learners learn through collaboration and sharing. Classroom activity in CLT. One of the goals of CLT is to develop fluency in language use. Fluency is developed by creative various classroom activities and in role play and oral activity done in pairs. The teacher sets the scene where the conversation will take place. Interview and oral activity done in pairs. Language games, scrambling and unscrambling of scent, jumbled scent, rearrangement, group work, a collaborative activity. A group of no more than 6 students is formed. Each student is assigned a role play in the group and each group is given the same task, information gap, a collaboration activity, and learners try to obtain information unknown to them. And dial hands, they led the conceptual basic of CLT in 1970. So, principles of language teaching, principles of naturalism, listening, speaking, reading, writing is a natural way of language learning. Language teaching should start orally. That pronunciation should be taught, grammar should be be taught inductively. Grammar should be taught inductively. Mother tongue is acquired naturally through natural. Mother tongue is acquired naturally through natural process. The same process should be followed in teaching a second language. Principle of imitation. Imitation is an important principle of language learning. A good speech is a result of good imitation. Imitation plus practice, mastery of language. The learners imitate the teacher. Therefore, the teacher must be correct in his use of grammar, spelling, and pronunciation. Principle of repetition. Repetition is the mother of learning. Repetition is one of the basic techniques of language learning. Habits are formed through repetition. Things often repeated are best remembered. It is the duty of a teacher to apply concept of repetition in the process of learning and principle of the concept of repetition in the process of learning. So we have discussed, in this PPT, we have discussed, communication and non-verbal communication, and so communication without words and non-verbal communication is a process of communication through sending and receiving wordless messages, and verbal communication, non-verbal communication. Before moving forward, let's keep in your mind that verbal communication and non-verbal communication are interconnected and they operate together in communication. So, verbal and non-verbal are all types of communication, but the difference between them is that we use our voice or body sign. So, this is all about the non-verbal communication, and we have discussed important points related to communications and why non-verbal communication is